Trainspotting 2. Did anybody ever expect this movie to actually get made? Because after about 20 years, you kind of stop hoping for a sequel, and then they finally announce one, and you get it. I'm actually talking a little low right now because I'm in a space which is not the place where I usually do this stuff. So if you'll excuse me, you're gonna have to bear with me for a couple of videos. The rest will be back to normal in due course of time. So Trainspotting 2 is directed by Danny Boyle, and this is the sequel to Trainspotting, one of the greatest movies ever made. So when this movie was announced, I was really excited because I love the first Trainspotting. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I just got back from the press screening earlier today in New York City before the big blizzard hits. And without giving too much away, this story is basically about Mark Renton, played by Ewan McGregor, coming back to Edinburgh after the 20 years have passed since the ending of the first movie, and he's come back for something, and stuff starts to go crazy again. I'm gonna keep it really low in terms of plot description because there's a lot happening in this movie, but the main aim of this movie is to really tie up some loose ends that were left in the first film. It's interesting to say that because the first film ends on a very imperfect, perfect note. It's actually a great ending, even though it doesn't really give us every single thing that we wanted out of it. That said, it was interesting to think about, like, what do you think happened after all this time? This movie is really about tying up all those things and giving a good conclusion to the story. That's why it's not really called Trainspotting 2, it's actually called T2 Trainspotting. And I can honestly say that Trainspotting 2, for the most part, is a competent enough sequel to the first Trainspotting. Is it as good as the first Trainspotting? No, not even close, but it does the job pretty damn well, and it has a very good sense of what it is and what it's trying to accomplish in this movie. It has some problems, we'll get into that, but for the most part, I was really pleased with what they did with this film. They don't try to match up to the first movie in any way, which I think is a good thing, because they don't try to make it into a film that is trying so hard to be what the first film was, because that would be a mistake, and often in trying to replicate what worked the first time, directors often get lost. Danny Boyle made sure that his story was very simple and it was very straightforward, and he didn't try to top the first movie in any way. It has its own soul, which is an excellent thing, and I think that's brilliant. All the performances in this movie are great. Ewan McGregor is amazing as ever as Renton. It's nice to see Sick Boy, Begbie, and Spud back again, and you have the whole team, and you have all those things happening from the previous movie leading into this movie, and the tensions that are there in their friendships because of events that transpired in the last movie. It's nice to see that side of their relationship, which is not so strong, and this movie really values that aspect very well. There are some very emotional scenes where Renton talks to the other characters, and you really feel for him in those moments, as well as the other characters as they're realizing things about their past. This movie's a lot about also going into your past and to look into things that happened with you and certain experiences that they had with drugs and women and everything and the crazy heroin stuff, and the fact that you can't always live in the past. You have to move on, you have to do other things in life. I think that's such an interesting way of handling it, and I like the fact that Danny Boyle took that mature approach with this movie. This is also a really well shot movie. It has a very frantic pace. It's not as frantic as the first movie though, and we'll get into that later, but for the most part, Danny Boyle does a great job of recapturing what was in that first movie style that people loved so much, and there are some neat edits over here on some scenes which are really reminiscent of that first movie, just to keep you in that world, and I think that's an excellent thing that they did. There's also some really crackerjack British humor and Scottish humor in this thing, which is pretty crazy. A lot of raunchy stuff here which you would never see in an American movie or any movie for that matter. Lots of words are said, lots of things are done. You have to see the movie for yourself to figure out what it is. Yeah, I couldn't get that last one to rhyme. It's a very well-written film. It has some excellent dialogue. The direction by Danny Boyle is amazing. My only issues with this movie are the fact that it is a little long. It is about an hour and 57 minutes, making it 22 minutes longer than the original one, and it did often affect the pace of the film, because while Trainspotting 2 does have a fast pace, it's not as fast as the first one, and it tends to drag in a few scenes, and you do feel that lag in those scenes, because it'll be something something really intense going on, and then the movie would just stop and stand still for a moment. And that wouldn't really be good for this kind of film, because this film does have those pacing issues every now and then in a couple of scenes. My other issue with this movie is that there is a character who is in this movie named Veronica, and she is related to the plot in a very substantial way, and she's a good character, but the scenes with her are not very interesting. Like, you're not very focused on those scenes, and you're not very interested in those scenes as much as you are with the other stuff that's going on in the movie, even though she is really connected to that other stuff which is going on. And that slowness, because of the extended runtime, does impact it a little bit. In the end, though, I really enjoyed this movie. I do highly recommend it if you have not seen it yet. If you have seen it, though, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm gonna give Trainspotting 2 an 8 out of 10. So guys, Trainspotting 2, have you seen it? What did you think about it? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know. You guys are the best. Thank you so much as always for watching. If you like this, please subscribe and choose life.